Silence isn't weakness. It's the moment you choose your dignity over their noise. I know what it feels like to be misunderstood, to be spoken over, to be disrespected in rooms you worked hard to enter. Your heart wants to respond, your ego wants to defend, but your soul knows there is a higher road. Today I want to talk to you about that road, the quiet one, the powerful one, the one that changes everything. There comes a moment in life when you realize that your voice is precious. Not because it is loud, not because it can win arguments, but because it carries your energy, your intention, your truth. For a long time, many of us are taught that speaking up is always strength, that explaining ourselves is maturity, that if we just choose the right words, the right tone, the right timing, people will finally understand us. But lived experience teaches a deeper lesson. Not every situation deserves your voice. Disrespect has a sound. Sometimes it's sharp and obvious, sometimes it's quiet and subtle. A dismissive glance, a joke at your expense, a boundary crossed and then explained away. And in those moments, the instinct is immediate. Your heart speeds up, your mind starts forming sentences. You want to correct, to clarify, to protect your dignity in real time. That reaction is human. But wisdom asks a different question. Is this conversation meant to heal or is it meant to drain? There are people who don't listen to understand. They listen to respond. They don't want truth, they want control. And when you offer your voice in those spaces, it doesn't empower you, it exhausts you. Silence then becomes an act of intelligence. It's not fear, it's not submission, it's clarity. It's you recognizing that engagement is optional and peace is not. I learned this the hard way. There were moments when I spoke from a place of honesty, hoping respect would follow. Instead, my words were twisted, minimized, or used against me. And each time I walked away feeling smaller, not stronger. That's when it became clear. My voice is not meant to convince people of my worth. My life will do that far better than any argument ever could. Faith teaches us that timing matters. Even truth spoken at the wrong moment can fall on closed hearts. Silence is not absence, it's alignment. It's trusting that you don't need to fight every misunderstanding. Some battles are beneath your calling. Some rooms don't deserve your presence, let alone your explanation. There is a quiet power in restraint. When you choose not to react, you reclaim control. You stop handing your emotional steering wheel to someone who doesn't know how to drive it. Silence interrupts patterns. It forces others to sit with their own behavior instead of feeding off your reaction. And whether they grow from that or not is no longer your responsibility. This doesn't mean you abandon your truth, it means you honor it. You save it for spaces where it will be received with care. You learn that dignity doesn't shout, it stands calm, unmoved, unavailable for disrespect. Over time, you begin to notice something remarkable. The less you explain yourself, the more peaceful you become. The less you engage in pointless exchanges, the more energy you have for your purpose. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head. You stop reliving moments that don't deserve a second of your life. Silence clears the mental noise. Discipline isn't only about consistency and effort. Sometimes discipline is knowing when to stop, when to step back, when to say internally, this is not where my spirit belongs. That kind of discipline builds self-respect. And self-respect changes how the world meets you. Not every silence is the same. There is the silence of fear, and then there is the silence of strength. The difference is intention. When your silence comes from self-worth, it becomes a boundary, a sacred one. You are not avoiding confrontation, you are choosing elevation. One day you look back and realize the moments you stayed quiet were the moments you grew the most. Because instead of pouring your energy into proving yourself, you invested it in becoming yourself. And that is the kind of growth no argument can ever give you. Your voice is powerful. That is exactly why you must be selective with it. Save it for truth, save it for love, save it for spaces that honor who you are. And when respect leaves the room, let your silence speak for you. There is a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when you realize staying is costing you more than leaving ever could. It doesn't arrive dramatically, it comes as a heaviness in your chest, a tiredness that sleep can't fix, a feeling that you are constantly shrinking to fit places that no longer fit you. And that is when walking away stops being an act of fear and starts becoming an act of self-respect. Walking away is misunderstood. People think it means you lost, that you couldn't handle it, that you gave up too easily. But the truth is, walking away requires more strength than staying where you are tolerated instead of valued. Staying is familiar. Staying is comfortable in a painful way. Walking away means stepping into uncertainty with nothing but faith and self-trust to guide you. I've had to walk away from rooms where I was celebrated only when I was convenient. From conversations where my needs were labeled as too much. From dynamics where my silence was preferred over my truth. And every single time my hands shook, my heart questioned itself. But my soul knew. It knew that abandoning myself to keep others comfortable was a betrayal I could no longer afford. Choosing yourself doesn't always look brave on the outside. Sometimes it looks lonely. Sometimes it looks like doubt. Sometimes it looks like starting over when you thought you were already so far along. But there is a sacred dignity in choosing yourself, especially when no one is clapping for you. We are taught, especially as women, to endure, to be patient, to adjust, to compromise endlessly in the name of love, loyalty, or success. But endurance without respect becomes self-erasure, and compromise without reciprocity becomes self-abandonment. Walking away is the moment you say, I matter here too. It's not impulsive, it's intentional, it's not anger, it's alignment. You don't storm out to prove a point, you leave quietly because you finally understand your worth doesn't need witnesses. You don't need permission to protect your heart. You don't need validation to choose peace. Walking away teaches you discipline in a deeper way, not the discipline of forcing yourself to stay strong in unhealthy places, but the discipline of honoring your inner voice, even when it's inconvenient. Especially when it's inconvenient, because growth often asks us to disappoint others before we stop disappointing ourselves. There is grief in walking away. Let's be honest about that. You grieve the version of the future you imagined. You grieve the time you invested. You grieve the hope you carried longer than you should have. But grief is not a sign you made the wrong choice. It's a sign you cared. And caring deeply is not a weakness. It's a testament to your humanity. What comes after walking away is space, and space is powerful. In that space, you hear yourself again. Your laughter returns differently. Your breath deepens. Your intuition sharpens. You realize how much noise you were surviving instead of living. And slowly, gently, you come home to yourself. Faith plays a quiet role here, because walking away often means trusting that what you leave behind is not your destiny. It means believing that what is meant for you will meet you without diminishing you. It means trusting that doors closing are sometimes divine protection, not rejection. Walking away doesn't burn bridges when done with grace. It simply stops you from crossing bridges that lead nowhere. You don't have to explain your departure to everyone. Some people will never understand because understanding would require accountability. And that's not your burden to carry. The most powerful part? Walking away teaches the world how to treat you. When you no longer negotiate your self-worth, people either rise to meet you or fall away. Both outcomes are clarity, both are freedom. And one day you realize something profound. You didn't lose anything by walking away. You gained yourself, your time, your energy, your peace. And that is not a loss, it's a return. When you choose yourself, truly choose yourself, life begins to respond differently. Opportunities align, relationships deepen, confidence settles into your bones. Because you are no longer asking, am I enough? You are living from the truth that you always were. And that is the quiet power of walking away. There is something deeply revealing about what happens when you stop reacting, when you remove your emotions from the performance, When you no longer rush to explain or defend, the noise settles. And in that stillness, truth has nowhere to hide. Silence has a way of exposing character, yours and theirs. For a long time, I believed that responding immediately was a sign of confidence. That strength meant standing my ground in every moment, correcting every wrong, answering every accusation. But over time, I realized that constant reaction keeps you trapped in other people's behavior. You become a participant in their chaos instead of an observer of your own truth. When you go quiet after disrespect, something shifts. The dynamic changes. You are no longer feeding the situation. You are no longer giving energy to words that were never meant to understand you in the first place. And without your reaction, people are left alone with themselves, their tone, their intentions, their behavior. Silence removes the distraction and lets reality speak. I've seen this happen in ways that surprised even me. The moment I stopped responding, stopped justifying, stopped chasing closure, people revealed their patterns. Some grew louder, some grew uncomfortable, some suddenly became kind. Others disappeared completely. And every response, every absence of response told me everything I needed to know. Silence is not passive. It is active restraint. It is choosing not to lower yourself into spaces where disrespect thrives on attention. Some people provoke not because they are strong, but because they are empty. They need your reaction to feel powerful. When you refuse to give it, the illusion collapses. There is a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you don't have to prove who you are. Your consistency becomes your testimony. Your character becomes your defense. Over time, people begin to see that you are steady, not reactive, grounded, not fragile, and those who intended to diminish you are exposed by their own actions. This kind of silence requires trust. Trust that the truth doesn't need your anxiety to survive. Trust that time will reveal what arguments never could. Trust that integrity has a voice even when you don't use yours. Faith teaches us something beautiful here, that what is hidden eventually comes to light, that justice does not depend on our volume, that peace is not found in winning every moment but in protecting our spirit. When you believe this deeply, silence becomes easier, not effortless, but intentional. You begin to understand that your energy is sacred. Every reaction costs something. It costs focus. It costs calm. It costs joy. And once you see how expensive reaction is, you become selective. You ask yourself, is this worth my peace? And more often than not, the answer is no. Silence also reveals who respects boundaries and who resents them. The people who truly value you will lean in with humility. They will reflect. They will adjust. The ones who benefit from disrespect will accuse you of being distant, cold, changed. But growth always looks threatening to those who rely on your tolerance. There is strength in letting people misunderstand you, because the ones who matter will eventually seek clarity with respect, and the ones who don't were never meant to walk with you anyway. Silence becomes a filter. It separates intention from entitlement. This doesn't mean you become closed or unkind. It means you become intentional. You choose when to speak, not because you're afraid, but because you're aware. A calm spirit speaks louder than a defensive one. Presence carries authority, and peace, real peace, doesn't argue. Over time, you begin to feel lighter, less pulled, less triggered. You stop rehearsing conversations that will never happen. You stop waiting for apologies that may never come. You accept what is, without letting it define you. And in that acceptance, freedom begins. Silence after disrespect is not about punishing others. It's about honoring yourself. It's about refusing to participate in cycles that require your self-betrayal. It's about letting actions speak when words have been exhausted. And one day, you'll notice something powerful. You won't need to announce your boundaries. People will feel them. You won't need to explain your worth. It will be evident in how you move, how you choose, how you stay grounded, even when tested, That is when you understand. Silence doesn't make you invisible. It made you undeniable. There comes a point in your life when you begin to understand that how you respond in difficult moments is not just a reaction, it is a record of your values, your self-respect, your inner discipline. Every response you choose, especially under pressure, quietly writes your legacy. In the heat of disrespect, the urge is to react quickly, to match tone with tone, to prove you were right, to reclaim dignity through words sharp enough to cut back. But dignity doesn't live in impulse, it lives in intention. And the strongest people I know are not the loudest in conflict, they are the most grounded. I remember moments when I wanted to respond immediately, when injustice felt personal, when silence felt like letting something slide. But experience taught me something profound. Your reaction lives longer than the insult. Long after the words fade, people remember how you carried yourself. They remember whether you remained composed or became consumed. Your response is a message. It tells the world who you are when things don't go your way. Anyone can be kind when respected. True character is revealed when you are tested. When your ego is invited to take control and you choose grace instead. Grace is not weakness. Grace is strength under control. It is the decision to rise above what is easy and choose what is right for your spirit. And that choice shapes how people trust you, follow you, and remember you. There is a reason faith traditions across the world emphasize restraint. Because restraint requires mastery of the self. And mastery of the self is the highest form of power. When you refuse to react in ways that compromise your values, you protect something far more important than pride. You protect your integrity. Legacy is not built in grand moments alone. It's built in small, quiet decisions, in how you speak when you are hurt, in how you exit when you are disrespected, in how you hold your head high without needing the last word. I've learned that some arguments offer no reward. Even if you win, you lose something of yourself, your peace, your time, your clarity, and once lost, those are difficult to recover. So instead of asking, how do I prove my point, I began asking, how do I want to be remembered? Do I want to be remembered as someone who reacted emotionally to every challenge? Or as someone who remained steady, focused, and self-aware? That question changes everything. When you choose calm over chaos, you teach others how to meet you. You set a standard, not through demands, but through example. And standards don't need explanations, they need consistency. There is also freedom in letting go of the need to control the narrative. You don't have to correct every misunderstanding. You don't have to defend your intentions to people committed to misinterpreting them. Your life will speak far louder than any response ever could. Time has a way of revealing truth. People eventually see patterns. They notice who remains respectful and who relies on provocation. They recognize who stands firm in storms and who creates them. And in that recognition, your legacy takes shape naturally. Walking away from disrespect with composure sends a powerful message, not just to others, but to yourself. It tells your inner world that you are safe with you, that you can trust yourself to choose dignity even when it's difficult, that you don't need to sacrifice your values to protect your ego. This kind of self-trust builds confidence that is unshakable. Confidence that doesn't need validation. Confidence that doesn't need applause. Confidence rooted in alignment. And when you live this way, you stop reacting to life, you start responding to it thoughtfully, purposefully, with wisdom. Years from now, when you look back, the moments you will be proudest of are not the times you won arguments, but the times you honored yourself. The times you chose peace over performance, the times you walked away with your integrity intact. Because legacy is not about what you say in moments of comfort. It's about how you respond when respect is tested. There is a quiet truth many people learn too late, yo. Our energy is not unlimited. It is not endlessly renewable. Every interaction, every emotional reaction, every moment of self-betrayal takes a piece of it. And disrespect is one of the fastest ways to drain it. Disrespect doesn't always arrive as cruelty. Sometimes it shows up as constant dismissal, as being talked over, as your boundaries are being treated like suggestions, as your time is being taken for granted. At first, you tell yourself it's not that serious. You try to be understanding. You try to be patient. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, you feel tired in a way that rest cannot fix. That exhaustion is your spirit asking for protection. For a long time, I didn't realize how much energy I was losing by staying emotionally engaged in places that did not honor me. I thought being available meant being strong. I thought responding meant being mature. But every time I allowed disrespect access to my emotions, I walked away feeling depleted. Not because I was weak, but because I was giving to something that gave nothing back. Energy is sacred. It fuels your creativity, your joy, your ability to love deeply and work with purpose. When it's constantly leaked into conflict, defense, and explanation, there is less left for the life you are meant to build. Silence is how you close the leak. When you stop engaging with disrespect, you stop feeding it. You remove your emotional investment from situations that thrive on reaction. You reclaim your attention. And attention is powerful. It shapes what grows in your life. There is discipline in this. Not the loud, visible kind, the quiet discipline of self-control, of choosing not to respond to every provocation, of deciding that peace is more valuable than being right. That kind of discipline changes you from the inside out. Faith teaches us stewardship, not just of money or time, but of the soul. You are responsible for how you protect your inner world, and not everything deserves access to it. Silence becomes a boundary that says, this ends here. When you protect your energy, you begin to notice how differently you move through the world. Your thoughts become clearer, your reactions soften, your confidence stabilizes. You are no longer constantly on edge, waiting for the next comment or conflict. You are present, grounded, and something else happens. You become more selective. You start investing your energy in people and pursuits that give life back to you. Conversations feel lighter. Work feels more meaningful. Relationships feel reciprocal instead of draining. Protecting your energy is not selfish, it is responsible. You cannot pour into others if your own cup is empty. And you cannot build a fulfilling life while constantly defending your worth. Silence also teaches people how to treat you. When disrespect no longer gets a reaction, it loses its power. Some people adjust, they learn, they rise. Others drift away because access to you is no longer easy. Both outcomes are clarity. There is peace in realizing you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to explain your boundaries to people committed to crossing them. You don't have to exhaust yourself trying to be understood by those who refuse to listen. Energy protected becomes energy multiplied. When you stop leaking your power, it shows up elsewhere. In your work, your health, your dreams. You feel stronger not because life got easier, but because you got wiser. You stopped wasting what was sacred. And one day you look at your life and notice how calm it feels, how centered, how aligned. Not because there's no challenge, but because you learned where not to spend yourself. That is the gift of silence after disrespect. It doesn't just protect your peace, it preserves your power. There is a moment of awakening that comes only when you step back. When you create distance, not to punish, not to disappear, but to finally see clearly. Distance has a way of removing the fog. And in that clarity, you begin to understand what you were too close to recognize before. When you are inside a situation, especially one filled with emotional history, it's hard to see it for what it truly is. You justify behaviors. You soften red flags. You explain away patterns because you've already invested so much of yourself. Distance interrupts that cycle. It gives you perspective. I've learned that clarity rarely arrives in the middle of noise. It comes in silence, in space, in moments where you are no longer reacting, no longer managing, no longer carrying weight that was never meant to be yours. When you step away, your nervous system exhales. And in that exhale, truth begins to surface. Distance shows you the difference between love and tolerance. Love feels steady, safe, respectful. Tolerance feels heavy, anxious, conditional. When you create space, you realize how often you were enduring instead of enjoying. How often you were explaining instead of being understood. It also reveals your role, not in a self-blaming way, but in an honest one. You see where you stayed too long, where you ignored your intuition, where you accepted less than you deserved, because you hoped things would change. That awareness is not meant to shame you, it's meant to free you. Healing requires space. You cannot heal in the same environment that hurt you. You cannot find peace while constantly being pulled back into old patterns. Distance allows your heart to reset, your mind to settle, your spirit to breathe again. Faith works powerfully in these quiet seasons. When the noise fades, you hear guidance more clearly. You begin to trust your inner voice again. You realize that sometimes doors close not to punish you, but to protect you. That separation is often divine redirection. Distance also tests relationships, the ones rooted in respect. LL survive space. They will approach you with humility, reflection, and care. The ones rooted in control or convenience will crumble. And that collapse is not a loss, it is revelation. There is nothing cold about choosing distance. It is an act of compassion toward yourself. You are not abandoning others. You are honoring your need to heal, to grow, to realign with who you are becoming. As clarity settles in, your standards change. You stop romanticizing inconsistency. You stop chasing closure from people who lack accountability. You stop explaining your worth. You begin to value peace more than familiarity, and something beautiful happens. You start recognizing patterns sooner. You no longer need intense lessons to wake you up. A feeling is enough. A moment is enough. Your intuition, once ignored, becomes trusted. Distance teaches you discernment. You learn when to engage and when to step back, when to speak and when silence is wiser. This discernment becomes one of your greatest strengths. It keeps you aligned, protected, focused. Over time, the clarity gained from distance reshapes your future. You choose differently, you love differently, you show up differently, not from fear, but from wisdom. And when you eventually step forward again, you do so with intention, with boundaries, with a deeper understanding of yourself. You no longer lose yourself trying to keep others close. That is the power of distance. It doesn't make you colder, it makes you clearer. Every time you walk away from disrespect, something invisible but powerful happens. You create space. And space is never empty. Space is a possibility. Space is an invitation. Space is where better things are finally able to find you. For a long time, many of us hold on because we're afraid of the void, afraid that if we let go, there will be nothing waiting on the other side. We cling to familiar pain because it feels safer than unknown peace. But what we don't realize is this: as long as your hands are full of what dishonors you, they cannot receive what's meant to honor you. I've seen this again and again in my own life. The moment I chose to walk away from environments that shrank me, something shifted. Not immediately, not magically, but steadily. Opportunities appeared that would never have found me if I had stayed. People entered my life who met me with respect instead of resistance. Peace settled in places where anxiety once lived. Walking away is not an ending, it's a clearing. Disrespect occupies space. It takes up emotional room. It fills your thoughts. It drains your confidence. And as long as it's there, it blocks growth. When you finally choose to leave, you make room for alignment, for relationships that don't require self-betrayal, for work that values your voice, for love that doesn't confuse you. Faith teaches us this principle quietly but clearly. Release precedes reward. You cannot step into the next chapter while gripping the last one in fear. Trust requires open hands, and walking away is an act of trust. Trust that what you're leaving is not your destiny. Trust that what's meant for you will meet you without disrespect. What's meant for you will not require you to beg. It will not require you to shrink. It will not require you to abandon your values to belong. When you walk away, you send a message to life itself: I am ready for better. And life listens. The right things arrive differently, gently, without force. They feel calm, not chaotic, supportive, not draining. You don't have to perform or prove yourself. You get to be. And that ease is not coincidence, it's confirmation. Walking away also reshapes your self-image. You begin to see yourself as someone who honors their own boundaries, someone who trusts their inner voice, someone who does not settle out of fear. That identity changes how you move forward. You choose higher, you expect more, you tolerate less. And yes, sometimes walking away feels like loss. You may grieve what you hoped it could be, but grief is temporary. Staying where you are disrespected is permanent damage, and you deserve better than survival. You deserve growth. Over time, you realize something profound. The best things in your life came after you had the courage to leave what wasn't aligned. The peace you feel now required the strength you showed then. The confidence you walk with today was born the moment you chose dignity over familiarity. Space invites healing. Space invites clarity. Space invites the life you prayed for. So if you are standing at the edge right now, unsure whether to let go, remember this: walking away is not rejection of others. It is acceptance of yourself. And when you choose yourself, truly choose yourself, the universe responds in ways you could never force. Make room, trust the silence. Better is already on its way. There comes a moment when everything quiets down, not because life has no challenges, but because you have learned how to stand in your truth without noise. That moment is the reward of choosing peace. And peace, when chosen intentionally, becomes the most powerful decision you will ever make. Silence after disrespect is not an escape. It is alignment. It is the moment you decide that your soul deserves rest more than your ego deserves revenge. It is choosing faith over fear, wisdom over impulse, dignity over display. And that choice reshapes your life in ways you don't always see immediately, but you always feel. When you choose peace, you stop outsourcing your worth. You no longer need others to understand you in order to trust yourself. You no longer wait for apologies to heal. You stop revisiting moments that hurt you, hoping they will change. You accept what is and you move forward without carrying the weight of resentment. Peace simplifies your life. It clears emotional clutter. It removes the constant inner dialogue of what you should have said, what you wish they understood, what you need to prove. And in that simplicity, your strength becomes undeniable. Faith lives here because peace requires trust. Trust that justice doesn't need your anger to exist. Trust that what's meant for you will not miss you. Trust that silence is sometimes the loudest declaration of self-worth. I've learned that the most powerful people in the room are not the ones speaking the most. They are the ones who are so grounded they don't need to react. Their presence is steady. Their choices are intentional. Their energy is calm but unshakable. Choosing peace does not mean you tolerate mistreatment. It means you refuse to participate in it. You walk away without bitterness. You release without resentment. You close doors gently, knowing that not every chapter is meant to last forever. And something beautiful happens when you live this way. You begin to attract peace. Your relationships become healthier. Your work becomes clearer. Your dreams feel closer because you are no longer divided inside. Peace sharpens your focus. It gives you room to grow. It restores your faith in yourself. And from that place you move with confidence, not because you are louder, but because you are aligned. Life will still test you. People will still misunderstand you. Disrespect may still knock. But now you know the answer. Not with words, with action, with silence, with walking away. And in that choice you rise. So remember this truth and carry it with you. You don't need to respond to everything that disrespects you. You don't need permission to protect your spirit. You don't need noise to prove your strength. When you choose peace, you choose power. When you choose dignity, you choose freedom. And when you walk away in faith, life meets you with purpose. Stand in your silence, walk in your worth, and let your life be the loudest testimony of who you are. And when the world misunderstands your silence, let it. God understands your heart. You were never called to explain yourself to everyone. You were called to live in truth. Walk away when respect disappears. Stand firm when your spirit is tested. Choose peace even when your ego wants war. Because what is meant for you will never require you to beg. What is protected by faith will never be taken by fear, and what you release with dignity will return as strength. So move forward quietly, trust deeply, and let your life speak for you. Your silence is not the end of your story, it's the beginning of your elevation.